My name is Alexander Reinhardt. I am 102 years old. When you live this long, you stop counting years and start counting eras. I was born in 1924 in Vienna, Austria, a city of music, coffee houses, and old souls. My mother used to say I was born during a snowstorm so heavy that even the church bells sounded muffled. Perhaps that is why I have always loved silence. This is my story, from a boy with scraped knees to an old man with trembling hands. My father, Otto Reinhardt, was a watchmaker. He believed time was sacred. If you respect time, he used to say, it will respect you. Our home was small but filled with ticking clocks. I grew up surrounded by seconds. My mother, Helena, played the piano every evening. The melodies of Mozart and Strauss floated through our apartment windows and into the street. Vienna was still healing from the First World War, but to me, it was magical. As a child, I loved looking at the sky. I would lie on my back in the park and imagine flying beyond the clouds. I dreamed of becoming a pilot, but history had other plans. In 1938, when I was 14, Austria was annexed by Nazi Germany. Soldiers marched through the streets. Flags changed overnight. Neighbors whispered. Jewish families who once owned bakeries and bookstores suddenly disappeared. My best friend, Samuel Klein, was Jewish. One day, he didn't come to school. I never saw him again. That was the first time I understood that the world was not fair. When World War II began, I was 15. By 18, I was forced into the German army. I did not join because I believed in it. I joined because refusing meant death. I was sent to the Eastern Front. Winter there was not cold, it was cruel. I saw men freeze standing up. I saw boys younger than me die calling for their mothers. War does not make heroes, it makes survivors. One night in 1944, during heavy fighting, I was injured by shrapnel in my leg. I lay in the snow, bleeding, staring at the sky I once loved as a child. I thought, this is how it ends, but it didn't. I was captured by Soviet forces and spent months in a prisoner of war camp. Hunger, cold, silence, these were my companions. Yet strangely, captivity saved my life. The war ended in 1945, and I was released. I returned to Vienna thinner, quieter, and 20 years older in spirit. Our apartment had been damaged, my father's shop destroyed, my mother's piano cracked, but they were alive. That was enough. Post-war Europe was rubble and hope mixed together. I refused to let my life be defined by destruction. Using skills learned from my father, I began repairing watches again. Time must move forward, I told myself. In 1951, I met Elena Fisher in a cafe near St. Stephen's Cathedral. She was studying literature. She had sharp blue eyes and a laugh that sounded like courage. We married in 1953. Those were difficult but beautiful years. Europe was rebuilding. Nations once enemies began speaking of cooperation. In 1957, the foundations of what would later become the European Union were laid. It felt like a miracle, former enemies shaking hands. In 1958, our first child, Lucas, was born. 2 years later, our daughter Sophia arrived. Holding them, I made a promise. You will not inherit my nightmares. The 1960s and 70s were full of transformation. Technology advanced, culture shifted, young people protested, demanded freedom, questioned everything. My son grew his hair long and talked about peace movements. I smiled. If rebellion meant no more war, then let them rebel. In 1969, I watched humanity land on the moon. I sat in my living room, stunned. In my lifetime, we went from horse carts to space travel. By the 1980s, I had built a successful clock restoration business. I became known across Austria for restoring antique timepieces. It felt symbolic, restoring history without reliving its pain. Then in 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. I watched people dance on concrete that once divided families. I cried quietly. I never thought I would see Germany united peacefully. Europe was healing. So was I. In 1994, I retired. Elena and I traveled across Europe, Italy, France, Spain. We visited places once marked by conflict and found laughter, music, and open borders. But time, the very thing I had respected all my life, began taking things from me. In 2001, Elena was diagnosed with cancer. I held her hand through every hospital visit. After 50 years of marriage, I could read her thoughts without words. She passed away in 2003. I was 79 years old, and suddenly the house felt enormous and empty. Grief at that age is different. It is not dramatic. It is quiet and permanent. But my grandchildren filled the silence. They asked me questions about the old days. I became a storyteller. The world became faster. Smartphones, social media, artificial intelligence, cars that park themselves. I, who was born in a world of oil lamps and handwritten letters, learned to video call my great-grandchildren. In 2020, during the global pandemic, I lived through yet another worldwide crisis. Isolation was difficult, but survival had always been my talent. At 96, I beat the virus. My doctor called me remarkable. I call it stubbornness. Chapter 7, 102 Years of Reflection. Now I sit by my window in Vienna. The city has changed, but the church bells still ring. What have I learned in 102 years? Hatred destroys faster than bombs. Love outlives war. Technology changes. Human emotions do not. The world will always feel like it is ending, and yet it continues. People ask me, Alexander, what is the secret to living so long? Here is the truth. There is no secret. I survived war by chance. I survived illness by luck. I survived grief by choice. The real achievement is not living 102 years. It is continuing to hope. Sometimes I dream of my childhood again, lying on my back, staring at the sky. After a century of history, that sky remains unchanged. Empires rise, borders shift, technology evolves, but the sky, it is patient. When my time comes, whether tomorrow or next winter, I will not fear it. I have lived through a century of fire and forgiveness. My name is Alexander Reinhardt. I am 102 years old. And if you are young and listening to me, remember this: the future will frighten you. Live anyway.